Good day and welcome to another Satrix collaboration with BlackRock, where we discuss interesting matters, macroeconomic themes and the like. Today we are delighted to welcome AJ Ziegler in studio. He is product strategist at BlackRock, covering thematics, sectors and the like. Really an interesting speaker. We had him on with our recent IndexMore event, as you'll recall. AJ is filled with some interesting insights, and I so look forward to discussing AI, developments, opportunities, just picking his brain on everything AI, really. So we hope you'll enjoy this session. AJ, welcome, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to South Africa.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and really happy to be here in person.
So there's recently been several quarterly calls from companies at the forefront of AI development. We won't name specifics, but viewers will know what I'm talking about. There's been quite a few companies that have come out with developments, their views on AI's development, and a lot of people were expecting more, so they were disappointed in the underlying technology and its trajectory. And I suppose in some sense, when your initial expectation is that a technology will revolutionize society, take our jobs, might even wipe out humanity, anything less than a slam dunk cure for cancer seems almost anticlimactic. So can you share some perspectives on what is new and what is exciting, and whether we should actually taper our expectations of how this technology will reach a level that we can one day call mature?
Yeah, I think there's two parts. I think on the first of tempering expectations, look, this is the most disruptive technological advancement that we've seen in a decade. And whenever you have this significant disruption, typically there's going to be a lot of losers in this theme. Whether they're in the Mag 7 or they're smaller mid-cap, there's going to be a divergence of winners and losers. And over the past earnings season, this is what you become to see. Some of the HR software applications didn't do so great because headcount might be lower because of AI. You can think of using AI for video or image editing. Maybe those softwares aren't going to be as utilized because we have AI now. And you can also think about some of the beneficiaries. Some of the cybersecurity companies did really well. So you're starting to see this dispersion of returns, or dispersion of results. So on your point of what's coming up next, the biggest one, probably the most exciting one, is text to video. Just giving a very specific text prompt, it can create a video that is almost at Hollywood level quality just on a simple text prompt. It just truly opens the imagination for how big this can get. If you're a film producer or a film director, think how many variables this takes out. Great, we don't need a set, we don't need 100 or so extras. We could do it all with generative AI. 5 years ago, we never even thought this was a possibility. And then with Sora, you saw it live, demo, which you could still see, which is truly, truly remarkable advancement in this theme.
So a lot of people might wonder why we are again addressing this topic of AI. Why are we jumping on bandwagon? What is it that we're discussing really? And I think it's important to stress the fact that, to your point, if you think about how disruptive this technology can be to so many industries, specifically on the generative side. So when we say generative AI, what we mean is AI that's able to generate a creative content that might not require more prompting than is necessary, I suppose. To your point, you say a sentence and it creates a video, and so in my mind, this is the power of this technology. It's we can't even imagine to what extent this can mature. But there's one thing that I've been grappling with recently, and I'd love to get your perspective on this. There's this term, artificial general intelligence, or AGI, that a lot of people see as almost the inevitable conclusion of AI's development. We're going to get to a point where AI has general capabilities that exceed human capabilities. So in other words, it reaches a point where AI becomes better than humans at doing certain tasks. Now, the problem that I have with this is twofold. First is, even if a technology, and it's not even proven that AGI is possible, but even if a technology can mature to a certain point, doesn't mean it necessarily would. So an example of this is nuclear fusion. We know it's theoretically possible, but getting there always seems decades off. That's the first problem, is we might not get there. The second problem that I have, and which is more of a philosophical problem, and I suppose it's a very hard question to pose to you, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is if you think about how these models are designed, they are trained on human input, right? And to the first question that I asked you, it's scraping Reddit posts, it's scraping Wikipedia, it's downloading videos and transcribing them to text and feeding this into the models, training them. But it's all based on human data, right? How can it be, though, theoretically, philosophically, that training on human data produces an algorithm that exceeds human capability? So in my mind, the question that we need to ask is, will AI simply mature to a level where it is at a median human level, because it is using the good and the bad data from humans, and it's actually not proven to be able to very well distinguish between what's good and what's bad data? Some might argue on this point, but let's say it's good at just preserving the good. Even then, it's purely trained on human data. So how can it be better than humans then?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest questions. This path to AGI, do we get there? How long will it take to get there? So to answer it really directly, we're still a ways away in this development. If AGI is kind of the chess grandmaster, the ultimate intellectual being, and AI is maybe around a young professional or a late teenager, there's a long gap between that late teenager and the chess grandmaster. So there's got to be a lot of building blocks in between that AGI potential that we still have to see. It's a big question mark. As you mentioned, maybe this training is going to take a lot longer than anticipated. Maybe it steers off because it's being trained on human data that some is good, some is bad, some accurate, some inaccurate. But we do think it's possible if AGI could be trained off of synthetic data. So data that's not generated by humans, but by AI models. That's kind of the sci-fi AGI, true potential. Will we get there? How long? We don't know. It seems like that direction is certainly possible, but let's take a step back and remember that there's going to be a lot of building blocks that we need to see happen before we get there.
And so I think an interesting point to consider as well, and it's to your point on synthetic data. Some might wonder, why would you use synthetic data? Simply because we're running out of human supplied data.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And there's also talks about taking old books, transcribing that, feeding it into the models. Really, the companies at the forefront of AI development, as far as my understanding goes, is hungry for data. Really trying to find more and more data. And if you reach a point where we can't feed in more human data, well, then we need to create synthetic data. Can these models be trained on synthetic data, though?
Yeah, most likely, yes. That's the path we're on. You're exactly right. At some point, we'll probably run out of data for these models to be trained on, and that would be the next level. But again, it's going to take some ways to get there. And I think a lot of people have this great aspirations, take a sector like healthcare. Can we use this combination of human data and synthetic data to cure cancer and cure all these terrible diseases that we've struggled to address? And the answer is, we're still such a long way to go for that. There's so many steps, and we got to see small successes first. And there's also a challenge, because to get there and that ultimate, cancer GPT scenario is that you need a ton of investment. But for companies to get incentivized to invest, you need some successes. So you have this chicken and the egg where I don't want to invest until I see success, but I'm not going to see success until I invest. And some of that investing is going on, but it's going to take a while to get there. So we have a bit more tempered expectations and think more of let's see the roadblocks to success. And not to go on too long, but important to remember this aspiration of AGI. In that pathway through, there's likely going to be a lot of investment opportunities along the way to that pathway. So that's what we remind ourselves about when thinking about AGI and that path to get there.
So on the point of there being a lot of opportunities, a lot of people have been pointing out that tech companies at the forefront of development have run hard. They've had a phenomenal year and a half in terms of growth. Can we expect more?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough question, but we get it all the time. And first off, it's almost an understatement. They've had an incredible run, but we're now starting to see some dispersion of winners. Even in the Mag 7, you're starting to see that widen. So when thinking about do they have more, let's look at growth and valuations. In terms of growth, the potential is huge. You have $1 trillion of infrastructure spend. And that's still happening. That's kind of the fuel for a lot of this growth. But then on the other side, you have to think that tech is a sector that's defined by disruption and innovation. The winners of tomorrow are rarely the same winners of today. So that question of, can they continue forever? Well, maybe if they have this growth, but there's a lot of competition coming into the space. And if we're right about this theme, that this is the biggest theme of the decade, there's going to be a lot more winners than just a handful of companies. And the last thing I'd say, so that's the growth. The growth opportunities will likely broaden out, but then you look at valuations. If you take just a simple average of all the tech companies' valuation, so just straight chart of EV to revenue multiples of all tech, valuations are around pre-pandemic levels. So you have this combination of, you're seeing a lot of growth within the stage. It's part of a much broader infrastructure rebuild. And valuations, pre-pandemic levels, that's certainly not a bubbly characteristic. So, without sounding too promissory, we still think there's a lot of opportunities for growth within the AI space, but the beneficiaries are going to broaden out, most likely. That's how we see the landscape.
You mentioned the term bubbly, and I wonder, a lot of people make the connection between current hype around AI, if you like, and the hype at the turn of the millennium, 2000, with the dot-com bubble, which it turned out in hindsight, in some part. But we've remained with the technology. The internet's expansion has matured and is continuing on its growth path. Now, the difference between AI and the dot-com bubble, in my mind, is these are real companies with real cash investing in the potential for expanding their capabilities, but they're probably, if you look at some of the big companies at the forefront of this development, they're not betting the house, it seems, right? And so they are putting in a lot of money, but you can argue there's a lot more money that these companies can put in.
For sure. Well, I would almost take a step back on that bubble question, because it's a great question, and we get it all the time. And, we hate hearing the word bubble, because exactly what you said, you compare today versus, 20 plus years ago in the tech bubble, it's completely different. Think about kind of the definition of a bubble. It's valuations built up by hope, aspirations without any substance underneath. AI is completely different. You've had a great return stream over the past year and a half, but it's been driven by earnings growth. It's been driven by very impressive results. It's driven by fundamentals. That's great. And to your point about not betting the house on AI, I agree and disagree. AI is still going to be the main driver in our view for the broader tech sector. But you're right, there are still other pockets of tech that aren't necessarily going to be purely AI-driven. There's other themes. There's fintech, electric vehicles. A much broader space. But addressing that term bubble, I would say think back and think, is this a bubbly condition where there's no substance behind it? In our view, not at all. It's completely different. There's tons of substance on this AI theme.
So before we get to other sectors and applications, I want to ask you, the BlackRock's Megaforce report that came out recently had a very interesting idea behind AI technology stack. And I want you to maybe explain what that means and also how that relates to the composition of the NASDAQ index specifically.
Yeah, so we think of the stack, or if you prefer maybe a more edible analogy, let's think of a layer cake. You got a layer wedding cake, let's say, and this is how we think of AI. At the bottom of this stack or cake, you have the infrastructure names. You have the semiconductors. You have the hyperscalers. It's mostly, the mega caps. Barriers to entry are huge, but it's critical for the rest of this cake. It's absolutely necessary. But you have multiple other layers as well. You have some of the data owners. What do I mean by data owners? Well, most models are trained by just what's publicly out there. TikTok, Wikipedia, Reddit. But then you think about, what about the proprietary data? What about law data and medical data? Well, there's companies out there that own this data, and they could put foundational models on top of that and sell it to, let's say, a lawyer for law data for a premium. So that's kind of at the middle of the stack, those unique opportunities. And then as you move up the stack, you have opportunities that are serving the future of AI. What's next? A lot of it's enterprise adoption. What do you mean by that? Be kind of honest with yourself. How much AI are we using day to day in our work? Maybe some ChatGPT, maybe some Copilot, but it's still at such an early stage of influence. And that's because to get there's a lot of work to be done in terms of getting your data organized for AI use. You need a lot of cybersecurity. You need a lot of this software to prep yourself for this AI integration for enterprises. Those are all, in our view, investment opportunities. And then the last part of the stack or the cake at the top is applications. These are the applications that serve for us to really use AI in our day-to-day. But here's the tricky part about this stack analogy. The higher up, the cake, the stack you get, the barriers to entry are a lot lower. You can make an AI app, let's say, but there's going to be tons of companies trying to do this, and they're not all going to be winners. Especially in the public space and also the privates. There's a lot of unicorns out there that are going to be, trying to be an AI play, benefit from this theme. There's not enough space for them all to be winners. So that's our stack analogy, and the higher you go, the tougher it gets, but that's the future of the AI theme.
And I tend to agree with that. That's why the research resonated with me, specifically around the requirement for infrastructure being developed first. You first have to build the road infrastructure before cars can drive on it, right? And that's why I find the NASDAQ index so appealing, because it has all of these mega cap companies that are at the forefront of technological development, where the barriers to entry is extremely high, like you mentioned. In terms of application, will it forever be the big caps, the mega caps that benefit from AI? When are we going to see the small and the mid caps benefit from this? When will they enter the chat?
When will they enter the chat? Yeah, they're definitely starting to enter, but they have a big challenge, ahead of them. First off, to be an AI company, you need a lot of spending. So that's why the mega caps are in already such a great position, because they have the money, the talent, the vision. They have all of that. But you think back and look at the tech landscape, every decade or so, you have a 70 to 80% turnover in the leadership of tech. So if history is any indication of the future, it's not always going to be the mega caps. Even though it feels that way sometimes, it's not always going to be the mega caps that win forever. And there's also a little extra catalyst for small mid caps. We haven't talked much about the macro environment, but it's about rates too. If you think of 2022, really tough year for tech. Because of rate hikes, who got hurt the most, it was these small mid-cap tech companies. If rates come down or we're in an environment of rate cuts, that should be materially beneficial for some of these small mid-cap companies. But at the end of the day, what's really going to matter for these small mid-caps, as they enter the chat, there's not going to be enough room for all of them. You have to stand out. You have to have a unique proposal. You have to be best in class. And whether they can do it better than the mega caps, still to be determined, but more often than not, the big winners, the current incumbents, get displaced by the next generation. And that's how we see it, for this AI theme as well.
I think a lot of people forget even the broadly preferred search engine today, Google, was I think the 17th search engine to come. So it's not always the first mover that retains its advantage, right? And I wonder, with AI's deployment and the commensurate efficiency gains that's going to come from it, or at least from our current perspective, will start to emerge. You mentioned earlier the small wins that we still need to see to convince some of the naysayers that we're not going to invest in this technology because we're not seeing yet the full application. I'm always reminded by David Letterman's interview with Bill Gates in the 90s, where he said, email? What? We have mail, right? So why would we use email? And so I think we're always, as humans, you need those visionaries that can see through the noise and see, this is how I can apply it. This is how I can actually change my company for the better. So I wonder, outside of the mega cap space, and if we can stay sort of on the small and mid cap space, with the commensurate efficiency gains that we're likely to see, do you think the opportunity set for investors longer term will be in the mid and small cap range where companies are using these efficiencies? Or can the mega caps still grow? I mean, is there room to grow even in terms of efficiency? Can they improve their own efficiency still?
Yeah, there's room for both to be right in the mega caps. When we say that 70 to 80% turnover, there's still 20 to 30% that remain, the big incumbents. So I think it's a bit more complex than just, will it be the mega caps or will it be the small mid caps? What's really going to be important is what kind of added value do you give to this theme? There's going to be a very broad, narrow set of winners in some of these areas. And one of the things I think about is, I know we're talking about publics, but even in the private space, there's 1,000 techie unicorns out there. How many of those are really going to be successful, in 5, 10 years from now? Just a handful. So you got to think, if you want to grow from, say, private to mega cap or small mid cap to mega cap, get that growth trajectory, the thing that you got to look for is it can't be yet another company, a yak, just a company that does something that a company already does. You have to be unique. And then there's the second part too. This AI theme is great, and many companies are saying, we utilize AI, we're a beneficiary of it, but can you show how your earnings are going to grow from that theme? Step one, don't be a yak. Yet another company, do something unique. Step two, you have to showcase to investors that this is impacting the bottom line. The mega caps have done it exceptionally well. So the next generation, whether it's still the mega caps, whether it's large cap, small mid, or private, you have to showcase that in your bottom line earnings.
So let's maybe get to themes, broad themes specifically. And BlackRock has done some interesting work and put out some research showing the potential for healthcare innovation and how disruptive that might be, and what an incredible opportunity that would be for companies to enter that space, because we have aging demographics and we have the inevitable need for improved healthcare. Will AI, through efficiency gains more broadly that we might not envisage today, be able to improve healthcare? And is healthcare innovation something that you see as a trend going forward that will remain relevant?
Oh, absolutely. When you think of health innovation, we've seen so much in the past 5 years, obviously in COVID, but even beyond, we've seen advancements in antibody drug conjugates and the way we have remote patient monitoring and wearables. There's tons of innovation going on. And then you have this mega force of AI coming into this structural growth theme of aging demographics. And it's a great combo. But before we get too excited on, is AI going to be everything for healthcare? Take a step back, and a lot of healthcare companies, which are already using a lot of AI in their processes, there's an opportunity to really just have efficiency gains. So before we start thinking about, cure for cancer and, drugs generated by AI, whether it's having a more formulated process for filing clinical trials, whether it's better for sourcing, patients for these trials, AI can have a meaningful step to make that more efficient. So it's absolutely a driver, a force for healthcare companies where healthcare can benefit. We do see healthcare innovation as a longer-term theme, but we do have a bit of managed expectations in that dream scenario where all these diseases and cancers, AI will fix it all. We're still a ways from that, but there's a lot of efficiency enhancements that are happening right now, and that's what we're excited about in the healthcare space.
So we've spoken about AI, we've spoken about healthcare. I wonder if there's any other themes that you see as interesting, as exciting moving ahead, whether that's related to AI or not. What other themes should investors be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, we talked a lot about AI, which is the topic of the day, right? But it's a great question because let's remind ourselves, the tech sector, it's the largest in the world. There's a lot of sub-themes within this, and a lot of them haven't had the hyper share price appreciation as the AI beneficiaries, but are still gaining from a mega force, a structural growth trend. A good example is probably fintech. Think of the way we've evolved in the way we pay, the way we bank. It's cash to card, it's in branch to maybe digital. This is a theme that's still going on, but in this theme of kind of broader future of finance, you haven't seen the same explosion of interest or share price appreciation for a lot of companies. And if you look at fintech kind of in aggregate, and it's a little subjectivity in there to do this, but broadly speaking, it's a lot cheaper than tech from a valuation standpoint. Not only that, a lot of fintech, it's actually cheaper than global equities. So you have this kind of wonderful combo of, a structural growth force that's been going on, but without that tech premium. And that's what fintech can offer. And then you almost have a call option a little bit in how can AI actually enhance a lot of these fintech efficiencies. And again, trading at valuations that are far discounted relative to the tech index.
So within fintech, what would you sort of highlight as interesting examples?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different ranges. Certainly digital payments is a big one. The way we've evolved. And you may think, I got in a taxi, I use my card, I'm already there. But you think globally, whether it's in broader Africa or maybe in Asia. Think of Kazakhstan for an example. There's companies there that are really leading the trend to transition from cash to card, physical branch banking to digital. And that's happening right now. And there's investable opportunities in those emerging markets that maybe not come to light right away when you think of fintech, but these are all exciting opportunities that we see benefiting from this longer-term trend of the future of finance.
Very interesting. AJ, time has flown, and we're basically running out of time. I want to thank you for being with us today. But before I'm going to let you go, I want to ask you again an unfair, hard question, right? that you might one day regret that you said, and your grandchildren might watch it and say, "What were you saying there, Grandpa?"
Yeah.
And that is, if you had a crystal ball and you can look beyond 2025, how will AI, in your view, your current vantage point, how will this play out? Where will we one day be in 2030 and beyond? I know Back to the Future didn't give me a hoverboard, right? And I was very disappointed. And so popular culture oftentimes frames a technology as maturing in a certain way. But when we reach that point, we look back and we go, oh, no, it didn't do that. So where do you think, with your own experience and your insights and your views, where do you see this going? So either instill more fear or inspire our viewers.
Yeah, sure thing. If I could summarize it in a sentence, AI will be our friend, right? AI is a tool, a product to make us more efficient, whether that's, ChatGPT or industry AI models, or if it's humanoids, robots, robotics. All of that is in the realm of possibilities, but this is a technology to make us more efficient. And you may think, 5-10 years, a question that I think all of us may have asked in the trust tree, is this going to take our job? Is this going to take over everything? Have we created a monster, that Terminator scenario? And I sometimes think whenever you have a major technological shift like this, it is scary. Think if you were an accountant in the 80s and you got your pen and paper and doing ledgers of your accounts, and then the spreadsheet comes out, the early versions of Excel. And you got your colleague coming, hey, Bob, that report, that account that took you a week, now it can take you an hour. What are you going to do? You're probably terrified at that moment. This technological efficiency is going to take my job. But there's a lot more accountants today than there were in the 80s. That job's still there. It's just evolved. So when we think of AI, AI is our friend. It will make us more efficient. There will be some job losses, but there will be some job gains. It can make us efficient. So rather than spending all this time just doing ledgers and accounts, we open up possibilities for more services, maybe advisory, maybe international tax. It makes us more efficient, more productive. And that's why I say AI 5-10 years down the road, let's embrace it. There's still a lot of uncertainties, but AI will be our friend.
I like that. And with that, we're going to conclude. We thank you for your time. We hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, speaking to AJ. And AJ, we're going to try and have you back. We hope you enjoy your stay in South Africa, and we'll see you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
To you at home, thank you for joining us today.